just us talking.
Well, that's it. It's all good.
I'm so proud
we're
of
gonna
you,
do a
Jillian.
take 2 because I wasn't recording. First,
All right.
JayPril, how y'all doing?
Girl,
Excellent.
Good.
Blessed.
Yes, I know.
Glad to be with you. Proud of
I'm
you.
so glad you guys. I know. I appreciate you guys. And we were just talking. And we said, as artists, we didn't realize our life was called quarantine.
That's it.
It's not that big of a change.
No, really, it's not. And I really, Jillian, I mean, as artists, I'm actually grateful for this break. To be honest with you, the pressure of not having to do an audition and feeling that pressure of, oh my God, I need to book a gig. We're kind of all on the same playing field right now. So
April, I felt the same way. I was like, now everybody's at home. Like, I don't have to be like, oh, let me try to set up a meeting. I don't have to. It's terrible, but I actually did feel like the sense of relief at first. I was like, nah, good.
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to do all this stuff. I can just sit for a minute without having to look on, Instagram and, we're doing this and, we're going to. But then the actor started again. We're going to monologue slams. I was like, well, you by yourself, damn it, because it's a guy.
Yes.
It's a goddamn pandemic and I'm a rest for a minute.
That's absolutely a good sort of commentary to our current times. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because even an opportunity to be restful, because me and A would always joke, people always say, I'm so tired of running. I'm so tired. And then when you get that opportunity to really decompress and sort of sit back, you create more work for yourself. Yeah. With those slams and, those, Instagram challenges and then the Zoom calls started happening. People were Zooming their backs out. So, but I think it was a good thing. I think it was a time for us to sort of pump the brakes in 2020. Yeah. It's been 400 years since Black people been working.
Sure has.
And I am remiss. I need to introduce because I just get in and So we have Jay Jones and April Parker Jones, two of my favorite people. What we are now dubbing as JayPril, my favorite power couple. They're in Atlanta now, but we're out here as actors. Jay's an activist, which I love, and I might have to steal.
Yes, me too.
I was like, I love activist. and April Parker Jones as actress. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about just the work you guys have done since you here or down back in Atlanta? I see Jay hasn't gained any of the quarantine 15, which I knew it.
The quarantine 15, is that what it's been dubbed as? Guilty.
That's what this is.
Guilty.
Y'all just fine. Y'all
quarantine 15.
It's all good.
Jay Jones,
damn you.
Train all the time out here, so he's in amazing shape. I knew that he was not going to have the 15 extra pounds.
Well, it's a habit, not a hobby, my dear sister.
Yes.
It's a habit, not a hobby.
That's right.
It's a part of my physical praise and worship.
Oh, yeah.
It's the way that I give my great creative reverence for the greatest gift we all have. Mm-hmm. And that's a healthy temple. So absolutely, we have been doing our physical praise and worship indeed.
I always think about what you say, what you said when you were here. You were like, anything, just do everything you do matters. So a mile walk, a little bit of something. I always remember that. And I do. I at least try to get in a mile. If I go out, I realize if I go out for a mile and say, I don't have to do any more than a mile, I'll probably do 3 or 5 miles.
See?
Of course.
See,
that's the mentality.
That's the mentality.
A little bit of something beat a whole lot of nothing, because once you begin to get going, you'll do a little more than you anticipate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in mental health, I just noticed too, like when I'm out, like just even if I'm out walking, it's like you feel better. You start to get creative. You have ideas. Things start flowing. Like I think, so Jay being like the exercise guru.
It's true,
right? I mean, is that something that you see?
Even Jillian, just being out in nature, and in this quarantine, fortunately, we're still able to go outside at least, even if it's just to walk around your neighborhood or the mailbox and back. But you're right. It's something about being out in nature that just refreshes you and energizes you and makes you one with nature and appreciate, and the creative juices do start to flow. So, I'm really happy that you're doing that.
It's essential because what going back in nature does is it returns the body to its natural habitat. What we don't realize is we were born to move and run and experience nature. Mm-hmm. God created outdoors, the sun, the moon, the earth, the plants, the animals. So we can all have a harmonious existence together. Yeah. So when we lock ourselves into these artificial settings, then our bodies become off-center.
Yeah,
and when we return to nature, our bodies find our center. because it's natural, you know. It's like babies being tossed in water. You don't have to tell them to swim. They eventually just swim because it's in them.
It's in them,
you know. So it's in you to appreciate that nature, and that's why you do.
Yeah. And look, that's also, it's also a blessing, kind of a silver lining throughout this whole quarantine that it happened during really great weather.
I know.
It's not freezing, outside right now. We're able to at least still go out.
There's been a lot of protests down in Atlanta. Have you guys been out at any of those, or how has that kind of impacted how you've been feeling? I feel like a kind of Black collective trauma has kind of come to the surface from just, the protests, and just actually starting to talk about like what we've been dealing with forever, and people listening and realizing, April, I was on the phone with on a Zoom with my agents, and, they just want to hear what their people of color, their clients had experienced. And then we were talking about hair. We were talking about, and they were like, we had no idea that this was a problem. We understand that there's apparently you all feel like you have to do your own hair on set. Like, oh, wow. He was like, that's something we can do. We can put it in the contract. And to see, tears flowing from people just at the recognition of this extra thing we've been doing without even thinking about it. Yeah. And I thought about you on Supergirl and how you were telling me about the hair and stuff. Oh, gosh. How has that been affecting you guys? Have you noticed like any, whether it's bringing up things you weren't even thinking about, or you were so used to doing on autopilot, or the protests, or any of it? Just weigh in.
We haven't personally participated in any of the protests. Mia, our oldest, will be 21 on Saturday, girl. 21.
Happy birthday, Mia.
She actually attended a peaceful protest here in our county, and she was really impacted by it. But as far as just, I guess, the kind of recognition or changes, that we've kind of experienced, or the impact from the unrest, if you would, I'm just really grateful for it, and I just feel like it's long overdue. I'm going to let Jay chime in because I know that he's really passionate about this. I'm just so excited too about what's to come from all this, especially for artists. Like you said, with, now with our white allies, because we do need them. we do need them.
And I got to say, that's been incredible. I was like, what's happening? I was like, who are all these people?
It's great.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's amazing. We've had some of our white friends reach out to us. Look, we just want to let you know we're here. What can we do to use our white privilege to help your initiatives? So just that outpouring of, wow, people are really, the veil is starting to be lifted, and people who really care are showing that they care.
And now the real work begins. Because right now what we have is attention. And we've had attention in history before. And we've done really well with attention, and we've not done so well with attention. Mm-hmm. The civil rights movement was a moment in time where the attention was on us because King had a strategy of showing at the moment with social media during that time, the news on 6 o'clock news. Yeah. He wanted to demonstrate on the 6 o'clock news how devastating this regime in the South was, sicking dogs on humans and water hoses. Mm-hmm. And it woke up the consciousness of a nation, and they took that consciousness all the way to the White House, and they got legislators and systemic change. We have to use that same energy today, because now the 6 o'clock news is everybody's cell phone. Yeah. We have it
which has been so amazing. Yeah.
Which has been amazing. It's been the game changer.
Yeah, and the media can't define the narrative. So even when it's like, oh, look at all these black rioters, the black people were like, this white lady burned us down.
Did you see this?
Yeah, right.
Did you see this white woman throwing this
tagging BLM? Right. Exactly. It's amazing. And that's what happened down there. I saw that thing in Wendy's with
that's with the white woman.
Yeah.
So it's about the real work, and as our allies, like you both have mentioned, our allies are coming to the surface. And it's not Black people's job to educate white people. It's not really our responsibility to do this, because we're the victims here. They have to come to a recognition. But we can lead them through our example of always taking the moral ground. We've always taken the high road. Like our dear sister in Atlanta said, they're grateful we're coming for equality and not revenge.
Okay, period.
Because the reality is we have every right to, but because of our moral standards, we've been able to really continue to have empathy for people who spitefully misuse us over time. So like April said, and like I hear you echoing, it's a good thing. It has come to the surface. Yes, it is recognizing and dealing with some historical failures of our nation and some untruths that have been perpetrated for generations. And at this point, the real work begins. So I think what you're doing, speaking on mental health and the damaging effect of this society, how it creates, psychosis and other things that won't be as healthy to our community as it needs to be.
PTSD.
These are vital.
Kids out of school now. I saw the Congressional Black Caucus did a mental health web conference the other day, and Jamal Bryant was down there. I think he pastors maybe Eddie Long's old church or something.
That's exactly what he does.
And he talked about how he went from, feeding families. He's like, maybe it was, 300 a month or something to something like 8,000 a week. Like it was something incredible, something huge amount. I was at this mental health conference out here that they did with a couple of churches and a mosque. And they were just talking about the rise in suicide in these Black churches. And the pastors were very honest about the fact, like, look, I took one class counseling in seminary, so LA is trying to do this more partnership with, mental health professionals and churches, because as Black folks, that's a lot of times the first place we'll go. Because, it's not always been in our culture. Like, so growing up, did you hear about mental health growing up? Were you taught, like, what did you hear in the community or from your families? Was it any mention of it, or?
We didn't talk mental health growing up. I mean, you might have had that cousin or something who, that baby slow,
right. Or touched or not right, or
he touched, but
and this is all our mental health quandary comes from our trauma, because our trauma informs our behavior. Your trauma tells you you're not to feel pain because there's no recourse. If you had pain on the plantation, who you gonna go to? What are you gonna go? You go to God.
You take it to the Lord in prayer.
So you learn that behavior over generations, and that trauma is passed down just like wealth in wealthy families.
Ooh,
but the trauma is passed down to Black families.
There's some
and that trauma informs our behavior. So clearly, when we think of how to fix it, we go to what's been comfortable. We go to the bottle. We self-medicate. We hit the weed. We do whatever we need to do. We're a little more promiscuous because we're seeking validation between a physical connection as opposed to a mental or psychological or spiritual connection. So we go through these different self-destructive patterns because the die was cast back in 1619. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So as we move through this current age, yes, we're still seeking help in our traditional ways, but because we now understand the pervasiveness, because our son committed suicide in 2018. You know what I'm saying? And we understood that the dynamic, we thought we were doing everything right, like everybody else, but Will started to understand that things were not what he wanted. So he started seeking help, and it may have come a little too late, but I think what it does is it sheds the light on issues that affect everybody, and we no longer have this aversion to being honest about it, because we, back in our community, you commit suicide, you go into hell. You can't even go to heaven.
And we don't even talk. We don't talk about that
because we're embarrassed. We feel inadequate. We feel, well, what did we do wrong? He was crazy.
So much you said is so good from the generational thing. I was even reading like some of the there's some theories that even Black people deal with stuff like high blood pressure more because I know I see her. She's so cute back there.
I'm gonna get you.
Because of, we had to be able to retain more salt on the slave ship on the way from, like, so the people who were able to survive, so you had to retain more sodium. And so maybe that's why we're even more sensitive to sodium now. So just
without question. I heard that.
I never heard that.
From physically to even stuff like the Tuskegee experiment and that other doctor who was, experimenting on Black women because they thought we didn't feel pain. So now we're less likely to go to the doctor. Like even that is trauma from this medical profession. So you need them, but you don't trust them. So what can you do? And
prime example
with things ourselves.
Atlanta had the CDC, right when the coronavirus kicked off, the CDC had representatives going to two of the most populous Black counties in Georgia, door to door, taking blood samples. And they had these face masks on and they didn't have a whole lot of notice. So they showed up in these Black communities. This was 2 months ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this was 2 months ago when the fires first broke out, because their plan was to try to mitigate some of the health disparities in the Black community. But of course, Black people, 1 out of 4 was like, what are you, crazy?
I know.
So the CDC started.
I'm not going to open the door.
They're going to open the door. So, and that's, to your point, that was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So our distrust of this health system, and that's when, and speaking of that, when the pandemic does create a vaccine, do you think Black people gonna take it?
Nope. Because they're on my Facebook right now, and I had no idea. I knew so many people who were, look, I don't mind a decent conspiracy theory. I don't mind it. You know what I mean? But we can only go so far with the
we can only go so far.
Right.
We can only go so far. And I know Tuskegee, it was a terrible thing, but I do believe more Black people have died from hypertension and not taking their insulin for their diabetes than Tuskegee killed. So we have a very dysfunctional relationship with medicine, and medicine sometimes has a very dysfunctional relationship with us. I think that's so interesting. And that is a thing that is, I would love to just talk to somebody about like how we overcome even that, because you're right. We the ones dying. We're the ones that are the nurses, with the frontline workers, the essential workers, and we are the least likely to go to the doctor, certainly to get that vaccine, certainly to eat right, certainly to walk that mile and get that BMI down. Like we just
believe it. One way we do it, Jillian, is to get more Black doctors. We need more Black trained healthcare professionals who we can trust. My doctor is a 27-year-old Black man from Morehouse College. We go to Morehouse Medical School, and his wife is a Black psychologist.
Oh,
they're
that's
young.
Beautiful, Jay.
They're young. They got
that
2 beautiful
wonderful.
Black babies.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's going to take me on out. He's going to be my doctor until the day I go home, because I would love to always be under a Black physician. Like Black boys need Black teachers, male teachers in particular.
Yeah.
A lot of Black boys go through school untaught by Black men until they get to college. And that has
maybe
a psychological impact. And maybe not even if they don't make it.
Because I had like 1 or 2 Black professors in college. I didn't have a whole lot myself.
See, I went to Morehouse. So
I
went to a Black school.
Right.
So clearly I went seeking that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, all of this affects the mental conditioning of these particular, and I'm particularly interested in Black boys. I know Black women and Black girls, I feel like Black boys are left more vulnerable. I feel like when the feminist movement happened, it gave women permission to expand their value. You can go from just being a mom and a wife, which was extremely valuable, to now being whatever you want to be. Mm-hmm. But the man is still stuck in that old paradigm of provider and protector. That's it.
But what's interesting? So many things I want to get into. So it's interesting about that. I almost feel like that feminist thing was never for Black women, though. Like we never, I don't ever remember a time of a woman not being some provider. You know what I mean? So I feel like
not in our community.
Black women got caught in this real weird thing. It's like I can't go over to the feminist movement because I'm so busy trying to protect my Black boys and provide too. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I'm gonna reach out for, because a Black woman started Black Lives Matter, because she's trying to cover these Black men. So a lot of times the woman is left like so stretched, so thin, I think too. Like,
absolutely.
It's such a difficult thing as I watch even my own kids grow up. That, just both of them had just really different challenges.
Yeah. And you're so very right, because yes, there is being Black in America already comes with this complete set of trauma for both men and women, boys and girls, off the rip. But when you have Black women in school, when you have Black women who are progressing, and you have Black female examples around you of self-determination, and then you continue to see Black male victims, unless, of course, they're involved in some entertainment or athletics. Other than that, Black men are invisible in America.
I know,
until there is some trauma.
And Hollywood does that too, because Hollywood could have, why was Trump on The Apprentice? It could have been some billionaire Black guy. We have billionaire Black people in America.
Right.
We do, but it's a marginalization. It's the minimalization of Black men. And what happens is, in the long run, this psychological toll happens, and Black men feel trapped in this box. So they get deeper and deeper into this cave, trying to self-medicate and self-deal. Because remember, especially if they've been athletes, when you're an athlete, you're taught from the cradle to play with an injury. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If your ankle's hurt, if your elbow's hurt, you play with that injury. You show up regardless. So it's same thing emotionally. If you're emotionally injured, you are told as a man to continue to show up.
And the family doesn't, and this is going back to like even the Black family, raising boys or children. Certainly. It's also like, we don't know how to help them always, because mental health has never been a thing that was talked about. It's like, so when someone comes to you with I know when I try to say loved one because I want to protect people's privacy. Sure. Loved one was breaking down. I had no idea what was happening. And people think a breakdown is fast, but the breakdown I watched happen, not knowing, it was about an 8 or 9 month downward breakdown spiral that I would have never known what it was. You know what I mean? It's like I didn't know what a sign of breakdown.
Of course, how would you?
Oh, yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, and do you guys look back to this is going back to your son, to Will?
Oh, the signs were absolutely there. The trauma was there.
You recognized it, or was it kind of like, oh, I don't know what this is either?
We recognized it. Of course, we had no idea the severity of the level that he was in. But Will was diagnosed. He was bipolar. He was on medication. But
how long had he been diagnosed?
We tried to get him home.
How long had he been diagnosed? Was he diagnosed?
He'd been diagnosed before the suicide for about 1.5 years.
Yeah, and even rewinding to the diagnosis of the bipolar, he didn't go in to the hospital, saying I got a mental issue. No. It was a respiratory issue.
And while there, of course, while you're getting intake, they run a battery.
Right, when you're doing intake.
Because was he having a respiratory issue, or was he like full of anxiety or something that they thought it was?
Asthma. Okay. He's got asthma.
Right.
So he had a respiratory issue. He went to the hospital, and they asked you a list, a battery of questions. Do you ever feel sad, or have you ever had suicidal thoughts? And I think at that moment, when he answered that question,
in an affirmative.
So first of all, that's diagnosed him. What an amazing thing for him to be honest in that way too. I mean, and that's what I do want to encourage people to be more honest.
Question.
Well, here's the other thing. I definitely agree with you. But we want to encourage people to be honest, but also it's up to us to also check the medical staff, because he was honest, but they were quick to prescribe him medication for bipolar
and without therapy.
Which exactly that wasn't really an option.
Right.
And these
the therapy went in conjunction with the medication.
Right. It was or was not.
It was. They wanted to have him have therapy, which he wasn't going to on a regular basis, because he was young. He was self-medicating with the opioids that they gave him and the marijuana that he was smoking. So and to your point, did we recognize it? Yes, we tried to get him to come back to Atlanta and stay here with us, because we saw him sort of skidding off in times, because he was down in Savannah at my father's. My loved ones down in Savannah weren't as cautious or as attentive as I would have thought they would have been.
They don't understand it, Jay. I'm sure they didn't understand it.
They don't understand
my mama in South Carolina, my loved ones in South Carolina.
Yes.
I like it.
My loved ones in South Carolina, no, they were calling me like, well, you guys need to just work. Like, not even, they just no understanding of the severity of or belief that a mental illness is actually a brain disorder. You should treat it as seriously as if you had diabetes. Not that we do treat diabetes seriously, because they don't take their medicine for that either. So I guess that's a bad example.
Right. But I think but going back to medicine, Jillian, I think that we need to also, as people who care about their loved ones, check the medications too. All medications don't necessarily coincide with the proper healing that person may need.
And it should be adjusted always. You should not be like, okay, this is just it. But the thing is, it's hard, because did he accept it? He had bipolar. Did he accept it? Like, okay, I have bipolar. Or was he like, ain't wrong with me?
Well, no, he accepted it, and he went to the opposite end of it. It became a crutch.
It became a crutch.
It became, I'm sick. I'm sick, Dad. I'm dealing with this thing. So it became an issue where.
But he didn't go to therapy and stuff. But he
exactly. He was in an environment that was chaotic, and when he came back to Atlanta, and he started getting it together. He started getting it together. But again, you can never tell. The trauma runs so deep. Will didn't have his dad growing up. I was young. His mom was young. We didn't love each other. We didn't really like each other. So ultimately, he spent some time with me, he spent some time with her, but it was disjointed. And her life was extremely traumatic from when she was a little girl. Yeah. So it carried out. He was the first child of 6 kids that she had. So you see this pattern of trauma starts very early. So even when he came to California to live with us, he admitted it was the best time of his life, but he was going to the 11th grade. He was at the end of his 10th grade going to the 11th, so he spent 11th and 12th out in California with us. He graduated. He was on a championship football team. He did everything he wanted because he had his father, he had his mother, who was a surrogate mother, but a stepmother, but a mother nonetheless. And that cohesion is what he needed. But the cup had been cracked earlier.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it had been dropped and cracked and damaged earlier. So no matter what type of joy we poured into the cup, eventually it would creep and crack and slip out of those cracks. And unfortunately, that's what happened. So what do when you have this trauma at the beginning? How do we, as a people, understand that trauma has happened to us all? And how can we readjust to it? Like you have, Jillian, like April and I had, because we've all had to go through the trauma
for sure.
of being Black and born in America.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So but the young millennials, the suicide rate is up 300% than the baby boomers. Mm-hmm. Clearly.
And for Black teens, in the last decade, it's gone up for just Black teens about 70% suicide rate. 70%.
Oh, yeah.
70. And to your point, one of you were like, well, what do you do? Because it's like after they become 18, your hands are tied in so many ways. It's like if they don't want to do something, it is a really, there's very little you can do. And then if and when something terrible happens, then you have like that, just, that guilt, or like other people having the parent shaming, or like, just question what you did
or we could have done. Yeah.
Right. And and I think that's also, people don't understand, mental illness in that way. And when they're an adult, if he was 15, well, you can tell them, you got to come here and I'm going to take you to your appointments, and I'm going to go over your medicine with you and your doctor. And we're going to, it seems like too much. He's too tired. We need to dial it back. But when they're over 18, and we all know 18-year-olds are not the most responsible people in the world, especially not when they have any kind of chemical imbalance or brain disorder or emotional disorder or any of it. So I feel like that's my biggest problem. I mean, there's so many problems in mental health, but that lack of a safety net for those young people, because that's often when it happens too. People don't really see symptoms until somewhere around 15 to 25. Like it's that's when a bipolar or a schizophrenia will come up, right when they're doing so well in the prime of their lives, and you see all of this potential.
Yeah.
But this is also the scariest part of their life, because remember, times are so uncertain for this millennial generation. They were born, and as they were getting into their, high school years, middle school years, Great Depression hits, recession hits. Now they got this COVID thing. Once they start to make a little money and get out into the world, and now they hit this skid. And of course, the global situation has changed. It's not as easy to get out into the world and get a good job. It's gig economies, people don't hire people anymore. They use independent contractors, and it's a gig economy. So that's a real pressure point when you're expected to be better than your parents, to do better than what your parents did. But there's no real infrastructure to create that for you. So what do? You go in where you feel like, am I inadequate? And is my generation broken in some way? And then you get on the internet and you see these, ideals of success and these facades.
Right. And they become very angry too, like, these people sold us this lie. And like, now I'm in debt and all these other things. I mean, but that's the great thing I will say about what I think is happening. They seem to be channeling that anger, and they are like, oh, no. Yeah. We want justice. We want a different society. We do not want this money to go to the rich. We want healthcare. Like they have to. Fire.
That's what's going to take. This young generation has gotten to the point where they see hopelessness if there is no change.
Yeah.
And it petrifies them because they got a lot of life to live. We halfway there. The young might go, but the old must go. You know what I'm saying? So the idea is they're looking down the road and they say, I'm not going to be able to buy a house. I'm not going to be able to afford a family. I'm not going to be able to have the type of life that my parents had because of what these adults are doing now. They're willing to go down in a flame of glory to ensure that their future is not lost. And we support that.
And that's what happens, right? Because even in the civil rights, people don't realize how young Martin Luther King was, how young John Lewis was. That's a 20-year-old. So it's it often takes that generation who's not kind of beaten down by this is just the way you got to do it.
That's right.
To go out there and make that change. So that is my great hope, I think, for what's going on. And so what are your tips? Like one thing, like you guys are so beautiful. I know I saw outside just about 3 weeks into COVID, the lockdown, the first couple break up on the street, fighting, screaming and carrying on. You don't want me here. I was like, oh my gosh, I should not be watching these people, but this is intriguing.
You could turn away.
No.
Damn you, COVID.
And the poor man never did say yes. She wanted him to be like, yeah, I do want you to stay. He was like, just calm down. He's like, but you don't want me here. He's like, just please calm down. I was like,
please now, baby. Not
he don't want you.
I know. Clearly, he don't want you there.
I know, but I have several friends who they already spent so much time with their significant other that they really genuinely love them and like them and know their presence. And that just strikes me so much about you two. So what tips would you give people just for surviving this time and keeping their relationships tight and strong and loving their kids? Just what thoughts would you have to send out?
Have a space where you can kind of go be by yourself for a little while. Jay's taking the smallest room in the house, which is the room with the toilet in it. And he spends so much time in there, educating himself, watching podcasts, listening to podcasts rather, watching documentaries. And we're in the same house, but that's his time away. I'll find some time to go outside and just sit on a bench and do some yoga. So I think finding those moments to be alone is helpful and
self-care.
Yeah.
Self-care.
And not feeling like you have to be doing. I wanted to resist the urge of feeling like I have to be so productive. I think it's great to be productive, but let yourself do what you need to do for yourself.
I play a lot of video games too.
Yeah. Oh yes.
I play a lot of video games. Out. You know what I'm saying?
She was like, he be listening to podcasts, he be watching the videos.
And plays video games.
I play
a lot of video games. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Because I'm home with them in the house. But I also say to April's point, which is brilliant, but I also say to that, lean into your lover. Mm-hmm. Lean into your lover and find out some of the things you didn't know. Look at old pictures together. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Remember what you came from. Even if it's 2-3 years into the relationship, reminisce on where you started from as a couple and understand that the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So lean into the fact,
laugh with each other.
We watch a few movies. April and I, believe it or not, aren't real movie people, but we end up watching documentaries. We saw the Michael Jordan documentary together.
Yeah.
And that was fun.
The Tiger King.
The Tiger King.
I watched all the Tiger King. I hated to admit it, but I could not look.
Yes, we do too. We love that. We love to hate it too. That was one of our things. Yeah. So we get in and we do things like that together, but we do find a time, like April said, to step away. But when we're together, we do lean into each other.
Yeah.
And then just have as much sex as you can.
Oh, that part.
Try new sexual things.
I'm gonna have to find somebody else to give me some single people tips. I don't know if Jay's advice. I have to think on it.
Let's find you a little fool you like
about exactly what the parameters are here.
Lord.
But we found time to do a little bit of everything here. And we, like you said from the outset, it's been a blessing.
Yeah, and we're around each other already so much being artists,
Right.
Most of the time is spent around each other anyway.
Yeah.
So that muscle is already strong.
My friends who are couples who already were either independently working or whatever, they are coasting. It's those people who one used to work 12 hours and the other used to work 8. They're like, wait a minute, I don't even know this.
Who are you?
You look like at 2:00 in the afternoon.
You still here, huh? They haven't called you back to work yet.
Right.
But I think what you're saying is so good. And at that Congressional Black Caucus thing, there was a lady with their PhD in psychology, and she was like, we always have to remember how much we've come from and how much we've overcome, and know that, like, tune into this to that spirit and know that we are going to get through.
Oh, for sure.
Whatever else comes.
Whatever else
2020 has.
Yeah.
That's right.
You ready?
Black people, man, that's a part of our power and our weakness. Is we're so damn strong. You know, sometimes we think we're strong enough to bear the burden of Herculean proportion, and we can't. Yeah. But we know situations like this ain't gonna break us neither.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
No,
I know. And April, that's such a Black women thing to me. Like that thing of like, really Hercules, like Superwoman. I'm gonna do all of this, and because we can does not mean it is not like
you should,
right?
Yeah,
right.
Or that we can't acknowledge like this is difficult, and maybe like this is not the state the state I necessarily should have to be in, like
right.
But it is because, like, you're the mom. And of course, like, mom means mom. Mom means you can always run to mama, and the mama's going to cook and she's going to do, you know what I mean? It's like, so I often feel Black women have some kind of superwoman thing to the point where maybe we don't even, even when somebody's offering to help, like, we don't know how to always be like.
You hit my point on the head, sis, because I was about to say, maybe empower some of these brothers to help with that load.
Absolutely.
Because, it's
give them an opportunity
to know how to say okay.
Their value.
Yeah.
To expand their value.
Absolutely.
Because, that will give men, because the psychological burden of being in such a narrow box of just provider and protector.
Right.
If you step outside that box, it's not really supported in a way, because women are so accustomed to doing things themselves now, because of whatever, we have that's the topic of another issue on how this divide between Black men and women happens. But nonetheless, one way to bridge this gap is to trust each other in knowing that we have so much more to offer each other.
Absolutely.
And a team is the thing. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah. And give each other grace and just maybe be open in ways that might not be just normal for us because of all the trauma.
Right. Exactly. The trauma prevents us from trusting. The trauma prevents us from unlearning some of the things that we've been taught.
Or scared that if we let go of control, everything's gonna fall apart. Like there's all this trauma. I mean, it is. Oh my gosh, no, really. Because then it's like, you're like, okay, I'm gonna pick the kids up. I'm like, you gonna pick them up? Yeah. And then I get a call. What? So now it's like it's just this level of bizarre anxiety that you just be living with that you don't even realize.
But see, the thing is, again, we feed that anxiety because just like you said, you gonna pick the kids up? Are you really gonna pick the kids up? Just the questioning undermines the man's confidence. When he says, I'm going to do it, trust that I'm going to do it. But then are you sure? But damn, she don't trust me anyway, so then I'm just going to go ahead on and not do it.
I got one question. So, so you say it once. You going to pick him up? Okay, great. Now, what you get to say if he don't pick him up? How does that conversation work?
That's a teaching. That's when you say, see, that's why I have some anxiety sometimes about you doing what you said you're going to do. Because if you don't do it, how can I trust you? I want to trust you. I need to trust you. It's a teaching moment. And as men and women come together, instead of having women's conferences on this side of town and a men's conference on the other side of town, why don't we start having conferences in the same building? And then we meet in the middle floor. The men at the bottom, the women on the top. Then we meet
boxing ring in the middle. No, I'm kidding.
No boxing ring.
No, just sometimes you gotta relieve a little stress and then like, all right, I'm calm now. I can go back and have a conversation. All right, I'm ready now.
That stress gotta be relieved. That's what sex is for, girl.
Oh boy.
You gotta need that shit.
This corona has been a come up for me. I don't know what everybody is complaining about. Corona 2020. Corona is like, what is the problem?
Ain't no problem. But we gonna get there.
No, I think that is beautiful. Jillian. No, I love it. No, I love it. And I think that's right. And I do think that is the beginning, like healing that family that can trickle down into, really covering these kids more and being able to focus on those things. As we become more aware of mental health and that stigma goes away. Thank you for sharing your story. Everybody I know has a story. So few people want to tell their story. Yeah. And I think it is only as we tell our stories that people are like, oh, I don't have to hide this. Oh, yes. I can actually advocate for better treatment here. Yes. Or, but it's going to take, I think, people, kind of coming out of the shadows and knowing there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Absolutely.
There's nothing to feel guilty about. There's nothing that you did wrong. There's nothing parenting that you did wrong. Like, this is an illness and it needs to be. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And just the other mental health of just our families and relationships. And thank you guys for being such a wonderful.
Thank you, Jillian. Thank you.
Sweetie, we are proud of you, my dear sister.
Yes, this is a topic that needs to be discussed. And thank you.
Again, I'm sorry.
No. I'm just going to say thank you so many times because, this is a topic that we typically don't talk about in the Black community. So you having this podcast, I'm just so proud of you. You are impacting so many. You're impacting us. And I can't wait to see where God takes you.
And you're giving people permission. You're giving people permission to learn more, to delve deeper. Because remember, the surface is just the beginning. It's like an iceberg. As we dig deeper, the body of the knowledge starts to be revealed. So we have to dig deeper than the surface, but it starts with acknowledgement and exposure. So you're exposing this to a lot of people and allowing us this platform to talk about it, to help us expose those as well. So God bless you in your mission, my dear sister.
Thank you so much. And bless you guys. Thank you for being such a blessing. And you know, just your strength and resilience and openness and vulnerability, I think it's going to be a blessing to so many people.
I trust that.
Thank you, sister.
Right.
Good luck, baby.
We're
going to talk to you whenever you need us again. We're here for you.
Okay, you got it. Love you back. All right, guys. Have a good one. Bye.